Hello, everyone. I'm Marnie Webb, and I'm with TechSoup, and welcome to the first of our TechSoup talks. So like so many of us around the world, my colleagues and I at TechSoup has really been focusing on what's necessary for civil society organizations to be confident, secure, and resilient so that they can keep doing the work they're doing for their communities. And we know how much pressure organizations around the world are under. Their digital threats are growing. The pace of change is increasing. And we believe that there's a real need for spaces where people can think together across sectors, roles, and geography. And that's why over the next 5 days, we're bringing together 10 speakers to explore cybersecurity, data governance, miscounter narratives, and broader collaboration with an eye toward the impact of all those topics on civil society. And I'm very happy to introduce our first speaker, Stéphane Duguin. He is the CEO of Cyberpeace Institute, and he spent decades tracking how nation states, criminal groups, and terrorist organizations weaponize disruptive technologies such as AI against vulnerable communities. And that includes civil society organizations and the people that we serve. Stéphane leads the Cyberpeace Institute to provide digital resilience against cyber attacks and disinformation, and he holds threat actors to account for the harms that they cause. Stéphane, thank you very much for being our first speaker in the series, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Marnie, for the kind words. So I will also mention where I am now. I'm in the middle of nowhere in France, a town called Saint-Étienne, which I joined because it's the 80th birthday of my dad. So there's a lot of this webinar happening from that place. So, it maybe nice to flag. Thanks again for the invitation. And really appreciate how you built this series of talk around the multifaceted threats that civil society is facing, and quite happy to share this moment with the crowd to discuss about the cybersecurity part of it. Interestingly, I'm listening to you, Marnie, when talking. This cybersecurity part is very intertwined with the rest of the threat landscape. So I may talk about technology in itself, like AI or disinformation or misinformation, because it's all working together, still focusing on cybersecurity. So also personally, I'm quite interested to follow what's going to happen next in terms of these talks. So you reminded me, I work as a Chief Executive Officer for the Cyberpeace Institute. We are a non-for-profit, so civil society organization based in Geneva, Switzerland, and we also have an office in The Hague, in the Netherlands. For those who do not know the Cyberpeace Institute, we've been created 5 years ago, so close to 6 at the end of this year. And our core mission, our core is really to provide services to vulnerable communities on the internet. And we decided to specialize our cybersecurity deliveries to civil society. So if you look at the Institute in terms of the theory of change, is really on delivering for free cybersecurity to civil society. I will come back to that and putting this in the context of the threat. At the same time, track and tracing independently the attacks which are targeting these civil societies. Here we're talking about cyber attacks, we're talking about disinformation or the merge of the two. And in order for these knowledge of what is happening on the ground, which each and every NGO that we are servicing, and this meta information about the threat landscape, being in capacity to do recommendation at policy level to seek systemic changes to regulation and the like for civil society to be more secure. But I'm kind of starting by the end. I think it's better maybe to go back to basics. What's the reality of the threat landscape when it comes to civil society? Because interestingly, when we started, it was not a given for colleagues or donors or potential supporters that we were engaging around the topic. They did not know that, and still a lot of people do not know, that there's a escalating threat landscape against civil society. So for some of us in the call, you know it very well. This is your daily reality. So you don't need it to be explained, but you would be surprised that for a lot of people, it's like, what do you mean? I mean, civil society, NGOs, a lot of them, they are just in the front line, doing good. They ensure access to water, food security. They are here to help refugees after declaration of war, invasion of countries. They are here to curb climate change. Who, in their right mindsets, would attack this civil society? And a lot of time, that's really the beginning of the conversation. And also to go to go against this, not against, but to adapt to this lack of knowledge, we also decided not only to provide for free cybersecurity services, but also to track and trace and to provide free knowledge on the reality of the threats. I'll come back to this. I would say civil society is, in fact, suffering from the same misunderstanding around cyber that everyone else. So a lot of people, when you discuss about cyber and cybersecurity, it's about computer, it's about password, it's about, technical things. But at the end of the day, cybersecurity, it's about essential services. It's about making sure that you can access water, that you can run an electric grid, that you can indeed have at-scale operation when it comes to climate change. And civil society in itself is the place where all these core topics, all these key topics where private sector do not go, where states do not go anymore, are the most important. And at the same time, in a context where civil society do not have the resources or the capacity to secure itself. And that's the first point of this discussion. Why is that? And how come that such an important sector is so not well protected? For those working in civil society in this call with others, there's several points which you will recognize that are creating something systemic. First issue is that the way civil society is funded, and I'm not talking about the funding these days, which has been disrupted and severely impacted. I'll come back to that, but let's look at this over the past 10 years. The way civil society is funded, in its vast majority, is by project. I mean, few of us, few organizations have the capacity to have organizational funding, budget to run your operations horizontally, and then there could be some decision making to prioritize data governance, technology, and cybersecurity. But for the vast majority of us, it's impossible. Even if you would want it, even if your board would be with you to have this kind of elevated strategy, the fact that you are financed by projects means that you have to deliver the project. That's it. And everything else is going to be counted overhead at the minimum. It would be difficult to invest across project on something so horizontal as cybersecurity. So that's one issue. The second issue is that let's say that you're one of the few lucky which have enough budget and also organizational budget that you can really spend on this as civil society. Where are you going to find the talents? How can you, as a civil society organization, compete in order to get a very scarce resource, which is cybersecurity professional, compete against big firms of the private sector, the banking sector, the insurance sector, and you name it. And very, very difficult to attract these talents, to be competitive in terms of the salary, benefit, condition, and then to retain them. So that's not easy. And lastly, this would be already complicated for 2 points I just mentioned in a normal time. But now, in a heavily disrupted funding moment for civil society, it becomes mission impossible. I mean, you saw over the past only 10 months, the amount of subsidies which simply disappeared, which was going to civil society from a budget cut of the US, obviously, but not only the US. I mean, it was from the Netherlands, the UK, in the EU, there's a lot of countries that decided just to stop and undermine their donation. So as civil society to organize, it's quite a dire situation. So that's the part where how complicated it is for civil society to be resilient. Then the second part is, okay, but maybe they're not resilient, but no one is attacking them, so it's still fine. But the second part is also problematic. Civil society is not so known, and specifically for some sectors, for NGOs, is one of the most attacked sector in the world. All sector taking into consideration. Why is that? Because first, it's one of the few sectors which is attacked by everyone with capacity to attack in cyberspace. You have three main types of threat actors in cyberspace. I mean, you can go into more granular and nuanced analysis, but let's just share three to ease this conversation. The first one is organized crime. So criminals which are in the business of performing cyber attacks in order to seek profit, to make money, to make a buck. It can be via ransomware. I'm going to encrypt the whole system of your organization and you have to pay me to give you back a decryption key so that you can continue working, to the whole chain of stealing information from you, which I can sell to someone else via specific denial of services. I'm going to make sure that your system are down for so long that you're going to want to pay me for something to stop. Criminal modus operandi that we see not only targeting civil society, but targeting also civil society in a targeted way. Like some criminals are going to attack organizations because they know that this organization at any moment of time is wealthy. Because again, the specificity of civil society is that because our work is quite public, a lot of time when there's a crisis, everyone knows where the money is going. I mean, if there's an earthquake, if there's a healthcare crisis, there's a crisis after the invasion of a country, then what's happening is that we know which civil society is getting funding in order to be in the front line. If we know, everyone knows. So it's kind of blinking spot on the map for criminals. We know exactly where to attack. I would say it's not the majority of attack when it comes to criminals. The vast majority of attacks is undiscriminated. Is this big campaign of attacks which are sent now with AI semi-automatically to everyone, and then who is going to click on the wrong attachment, on the wrong link, is going to become a victim. So it's like I target everyone, hoping that someone is going to move from target to victim because of the a moment of weakness. This is impacting civil society quite a lot because of the first point that I was mentioning. They don't have the budget to scale up their cybersecurity maturity, so they're more prone to be victim of these discriminated cyber attacks. Criminals. The second type of actor, which is much worse, is state actors. Because here you would argue you can defend yourself against criminals because their capacity, except for the very, very wealthy group, is still somewhat limited. State actors is very different. If states really want to attack you, normally they know why, and they can put a lot of capacity into this. And here we go into this whole stream of cyber attacks, which are around deployment of spyware, the surveillance mechanism to enter into the system, steal information, position, and in fact, pre-organized physical action against civil society. So that's the second type of attack, against which, again, the level of maturity that you need to have for cybersecurity is quite high. And then the third one, we saw it a lot after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, is individuals, civilian, which are improvising themselves cyber Templars, defenders, and you name it. It was happening on every part of the country, the conflict. And a lot of time, these people were targeting civil society just because it's an easy target. Because there, a lot of time, this we call this hacktivist or whatever name you want to give it. It's basically someone improvising himself or herself cyber criminals for a few hours in day or a few weeks in the month. And they go for the low-hanging fruit because it's not that all of these groups have a big, solid technical capacity. Criminals, state actors, civilian playing cyber criminals. And then you end up into a unique threat landscape against civil society. Here I'm focusing on cyber attacks. There's going to be another talk on disinformation. Let me tell you that it's exactly the same for disinformation, if not worse. Why? Because also the technical skills that you need to have in place to put at scale disinformation campaigns, it's much more easy for non-technical people than a bit more technical savvy individuals to launch hardcore cyber. But what we see now is the convergence, really the convergence in between cyber attacks. So if you look at the internet and you imagine as a slice of capabilities, the down slice would be the pipes, the network, the cable where the electricity goes through and where the network lives. And the top would be the content that is floating on the internet. And between the bottom and the top, you have everything from the router to organize the networks up to the application that runs on your phone in order to present you some content. If you look at all these stacks, civil society looking at this is impacted by the higher end of the stack, which is a malicious content with the intent to do harm, and attack against the networks themselves in order to take down the networks of civil society. And the threat actors doing that, a lot of time they do both, they do everything. Interestingly, in the world, we decided to separate expertise, if not agencies, sometimes budgets when it comes to cybersecurity and disinformation. It's very neat, it's very nice also from the regulation, but the real work doesn't work like this. I mean, from the attacker's point of view, it doesn't work like that. They have one HR system to hire everyone across the board. They have one set of servers that they're moving everywhere to perform all the attacks. And when they have someone that they want to attack, they fire at that someone everything there. So that's a problem because to scale response, you need to scale response across topics which are today still too much considered separate. That's for the threat landscape. It's quite brief. It is, no, I mean, that's, we put in place, and you can find it online, the Cyberpeace Tracer, cyberpeacetracer.org, which is a public-facing platform to track and trace cyber attacks and disinformation against civil society. We launched it very recently. It's very incomplete, but we knew it. It's incomplete because we just wanted to start. If you wait to have the full picture of everything that's happening on the planet, then you end up never putting anything out there. But now we have a platform where we can start a conversation with a lot of actors who have data on what is happening to civil society, so we can get more and more and more of this data. The aim is simple. We want to be more efficient in the services to protect civil society. If you understand better how the attacks work, you're better in terms of how to organize the defense. That's quite simple. But also we want to have data, independent data, research, which can be presented to policymakers so that civil society is not the part which is always forgotten in a cyber regulation. The big cyber regulation these days, they're around what? They're around protecting critical infrastructure, they're around some specific, sectors, compliance-led requirements, for example, for the financial sector. Nothing for civil society, not much. And we are talking about a sector which is critical, but not considered critical infrastructure. So it's important to have data and data and data so that we can also move the needle from that point of view. The point of view of regulation to prevent the attack, but also the point of view of regulation to hold threat actors to account. And that's my third point here, is why the threat landscape is so problematic for civil society, is that what's the risk at the end of the day? What are you really risking if you start performing a cyber attack against an NGO, the civil society actors? I mean, what's the accountability level? And here we want to provide data to all national or supranational jurisdiction in order to be sure that there's going to be a judicial process to go against the one who attacks. And if these are state actors, to be sure that international law, international framework can be activated for what is happening, which is, in the world we live in, you imagine, not an easy task. So, having that in mind, I would like to spend the rest of the address on solutions. Because it's very easy when you talk about cybersecurity that everything is bad, nothing works, and but we need to look into solution and looking at solution from two simple angles. We are now in a moment in time where capabilities are scarce. We know that. Budget is going down. It's difficult for us to have talent. Multilateralism, which was a big of the interface of civil society, is not not going well, to say the least. And how to face this scarcity when we are facing an economy of scale. So criminal actors or state actors, they organize not to build capacity to have loose groups which are working with each other, sometimes not even knowing that they work with each other, but all of them, the chain of attack that they create as a single target. So you have a world, shady world, which is extremely well organized in order to scale, in order to subcontract, in order to connect and to collect, when on the other hand, we have scarcity of resources and we organize in silos. So solutions. We launched, especially for civil society, a program called the Cyber Peace Builders. Cyber Peace Builders are in fact volunteers, cyber volunteers, which we are sourcing in the private sector. I was mentioning the talent problem. That's where the talent are today. So instead of trying to create this talent that would take decades to create, the whole point is to tap into the talent ways. And today it's in the private sector, a lot of cases. So we have this program where companies are providing to us cyber volunteers. We have more than 1,500 of them to provide free cybersecurities to NGOs. So, and we are servicing close to 600 NGOs today. So we think about this to scale. I go back to my comment before with scarcity. If we continue to go for solution which would need for each and every solution, each and every tool, a specific funding, a specific project, it will never scale. Here, the whole point is to look into where the talent are, that is in the scaling phase, because some of these companies are quite well off and they don't face the same problem that civil society is having. And then to piggyback on this, to deploy a resource where the resource is needed. And to be honest, cybersecurity professionals, a lot of them started this work with the heart in the right place. Really, they want to protect network, to prevent attacks. So if you give them the opportunity to use their skills and talents, not to protect only the company which is giving them salary, but also Terre des Hommes, Doctors Without Borders, and the like. I mean, you have motivation, clearly. So I don't have to make this speech for too long to convince these professionals. So Cyber Peace Builders as a way to scale, Cyber Peace Tracer, I was mentioning it before, as a way also to scale data collection in order to present the reality of the threats so that we can get a different regulation. different package of security that we can deploy to civil society, but more importantly, to go to donors. The whole point here is to make sure that donors today understand the need for cybersecurity. Interestingly, there's a few donors around the globe who really understand the need for cybersecurity, the need to protect the civil society, but they know about cyber quite a lot. There's a handful of them. All the other donors who are today making sure that these essential services like fighting climate change, ensuring access to healthcare, food security, clean water, financed in huge part by private philanthropies or institutional donors, they do not have this quite so high knowledge on the need to also provide cybersecurity. So these are the donors that we go to, to say you have grantees, you have this ecosystem that you want to be there in order to provide these very essential services for humanity. You have to think about their cybersecurity. You have to think about the data governance. You have to think how they're going to deploy a technology, namely today AI, in order not to create more risk and to add more value. And all of that needs to represent an investment. So we last year in The Hague, in the Peace Palace, launched a global action plan, the Beyond 125 action plan, because it was 125 years before that day that there was this first peace conference in the world. And we were like, okay, we're not going to wait another 125 years to ensure the cybersecurity of the one protecting peace and justice in cyberspace, the frontliners, the civil society. So we launched this action plan, and it was in response of a call of the chief executive officers of major civil society around the planet, saying something very simple. We are CEOs of the civil society. We are trying in a world that is heavily disrupted to do our job, to do it good. And here we are seeing that we cannot defend ourselves. We cannot get the talent. So the call was really to donors. Donors, you have to do something about this. And interestingly, because to create critical mass, it's about scaling. We very recently, in cooperation with the Global Cyber Alliance and other civil society in the front of this initiative, we could launch a dedicated fund called the Common Good Cyber Fund, which has been announced in the G7 in June, which is going to allow for donors to pool resources in order to finance the cybersecurity of civil society. And especially to finance these civil society which are ensuring the cybersecurity of everyone, and there's hundreds of them. So that's a bit what I wanted to share today. Is very complicated threat landscape. Civil society at the cornerstones of different threat actors, different intents to do harm. The problematic today that's there's a convergence between cyber attacks and disinformation. I mentioned AI just once. I was trying not to make this a speech on AI because otherwise you just talk about this. But please have in mind that AI is an accelerator to the threats when it comes to civil society. AI is clearly also an accelerator of defense, but civil society sometimes cannot access these tools that can be accelerated. So today it accelerates the threats for civil society, and that's an issue, obviously. But we can think about solution. Solution is about platforms where we put together capacity that already exists and can be really deployed for civil society, pooling funding, like with the Common Good Cyber Fund, pooling data gathering so that we have the best global view on what is happening to civil society. Because if you do that, you can start thinking also on our side, economy of scale. We scale the support. We have more people trying to do the same thing. We scale the knowledge. We have so much data points on what is happening that we can start influencing policies and making sure that civil society is going to be on the front of the mind of the one creating laws for accountability. And we need that very, very much these days. We scale funding because the money has just disappeared, vanished for the past 10 months, will not come back. I mean, that's my really personal reading on this. So we need to organize very differently if you want to make sure that colleagues today are making an essential work can do it because they're also cyber secure. And I would finish with this. Don't look at this only as something that you do globally. Like, no, that's a big thing global. You can do this kind of activities regionally. 2 examples. We had a partnership with the city of The Hague in the Netherlands, where they, as city of The Hague, decided that they wanted to have cybersecurity for the NGOs in the city. Well, a partnership with them, we delivered that. We have a partnership in the United States to activate network of volunteers, not only from the private sector, network of volunteers to provide for free cybersecurity to more vulnerable communities and sometimes even underserved critical services. So it's used 30 plus. So there's a way to regionalize, be offer of scale depending on the problematic, but making sure that at minima it remains a known problem, and that for donors, for policymakers, it's a priority, it's critical, and that's what we're trying to do, and not alone for sure. It's a work of the collective. Thank you very much, TechSoup, for inviting me today, because that's part of it. I mean, it's easier for us to build upon what has been done by other colleagues, and thanks, Marnie, for that. When you have this community that exists, that knows that there's supposed to be technology accessible for them, then you can build up the talk around cybersecurity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the time that you've spent with us, and I also appreciate all of you for attending. I think the one of the big takeaways for me from what you were just talking about is the need to think about the collective so that we can scale a response. That we have this highly fragmented network of civil society organizations, and we have resources, and we need those platforms like the ones that you've built with Cyber Peace Builders and others to be able to tap into those resources so we can get them to that fragmented audience. And it takes all of us in spreading the word. So thanks for being a part of this series and for kicking us off on the TechSoup Talks today. As I said at the beginning, this is the first of 10 talks that will happen over this week, focusing first today's on security, tomorrow's data governance, misinformation, counter narratives, and then collaboration on the final day. So thank you all very much for attending. Thank you for kicking us off with speaking, and hopefully we'll see you again at one of the other sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.